Hello everyone, and welcome to this update for Christmas for both Europe and the USA. So, same as on Saturday, we're using the ECM 12Z for Europe and the GFS 12Z for the USA, as the ECM is the European model and the GFS is the American model. And we'll look at the weather as far as these models go out to into the Christmas period. So starting off with the ECM run from midday today. So get the hover on, out of the way. So today, Monday the 18th, is a day with high pressure over Spain into France and off into central areas of Europe. This is technically a mild high. However, under its in clear skies, we will see frost by night, but fairly mild in sunshine by day. In the UK Islands, into southern Scandinavia, also into northern areas of Europe, also towards the Baltic Sea, we see westerly winds with areas of rain coming in. And in the final for Europe is cold, with these areas of low pressure over these areas. That's the PV, with areas of rain, sleet, and snow, mainly snow, especially over high ground, but definitely not only there. I have to get used to forecasting for cold areas. I live in Ireland, and in this country, snow is mainly over high ground. So tomorrow, Tuesday, we see an area of rain come through into Ireland, the UK, also into France, Low Countries, Germany, Denmark, off into Poland, Sweden, areas like that. A deep low forming over Sweden, Finland, and that's dragging colder air into Scandinavia. Still, that ridge to our south over parts of like Iberia, across towards Greece and Turkey. That keeps the dry weather going, quite mild by day and sunshine, frosty nights. Then into Wednesday, the 20th, we see a strong westerly winds into parts of Ireland, the UK, into parts of France, Low Countries, Germany as well. Cold over Scandinavia with areas of sleet and snow around. In the south of Europe, that ridge breaks down actually, and we see just generally, I think, a cooler MS coming in with some more cloud abouts. Also, there's wind in. Also, the wind is in from a generally westerly or northerly direction. Thursday sees a low pressure moving into Norway, and that brings down a cool but strong wind from the west into Ireland, the UK, into many parts of northwest Europe. In Eastern Europe, it's quite calm but quite cold. Into Friday, a deep trough sits over the Baltic Sea, and with that, cold air floods into Scandinavia and northern and eastern Europe. With that trough there, areas of snow with that. In the south of Europe, we see these northwesterly winds bringing in showers and rain with them, obviously snowing over high grounds, and if it's cold enough, down towards low levels as well. But a ridge near Iberia will keep it dry and quite nice there. Into Saturday, the eve of Christmas Eve, we see again this big cold pool over Eastern Europe and Northern Europe. Further southwards is westerly winds and areas of rain and showers with that. But still, Iberia is driest near that ridge. Christmas Eve sees westerly winds from Ireland, the UK, right the way across towards like areas like Ukraine around here. Strong westerly winds through central areas. Again, deep cold pool over Scandinavia and the Baltic Sea, and over Iberia is driest. So a big westerly flow. Christmas Day, very similar to Christmas Eve. High over Iberia, very much dry there. Westerly winds up towards around Scandinavia, where it's coldest. So low in the north, high in the south, in between westerly winds. So there are like three main zones, if you will. Then Boxing Day sees a deep low towards Scotland and Ireland. That brings an area of wet wind weather in. The cold air, I think it does irritate slightly from Scandinavia. In the south, it's still dry. Then I think the ridge comes back somewhat to some areas into next week. And actually, on this run, we see a block over Iceland forming, and that brings colder air towards Western Europe possibly by then. A slight high over Scandinavia, turning dry there, but very, very cold. Deep northerly plunge into Russia, mild ridge in the south. For temperatures with this, I like that. Okay, so again, there are very mild temperatures aloft over these areas of Europe. However, under high, clear skies, frosty nights. Tomorrow, Tuesday, cooler air moves into UK and Ireland, colder air into northern Scandinavia, so snowfall there. Then we see this colder blast into Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. Elsewhere, it's milder, especially towards the southwest of Europe. Also, that is where the high will be. As you see, cold blast into many areas of Eastern and Northern Europe there, pre-Christmas. So that is something interesting. For those of you over there, in Ireland, it's just miles. Christmas Eve, very similar. I'd say anywhere north of like Scotland through towards Denmark, Germany, Poland, down towards Ukraine. Anywhere north of that is cold. South of that is mild. Christmas Day, so again, very similar boundary there. Again, on that boundary, could be a front, and there could be snow. Again, that boundary stays the same pretty much. And actually, colder air comes into Scandinavia. Comes in towards Scandinavia next week. Even colder air. Could it? Here is the GFS run for the USA. So starting off today, Monday and Tuesday, this big cold blast into the Midwest and the Northeastern states. A ridge through the Great Plains, and on the West Coast we have some lows coming in. Into Tuesday and Wednesday then, this big ridge forms over eastern states, and that turns things dry and mild, but cold by night, obviously. We see these troughs off the West Coast, and they bring milder air east of them, but also rainfall on the West Coast in some form. Heights rising over parts of Canada by Thursday, so colder air comes southwards into the far northeast, I'd say, but elsewhere it's mild with winds up from the south, so very mild there as we head towards the pre-Christmas period. Also, these lows coming in off the Pacific will bring rain to these western states, especially in the north. This is Christmas Eve, so you've got these troughs in the west. They will threaten showers and thunderstorms, so on. While in the east, there's this big ridge, and that draws up very mild winds from the southeast, especially into the Midwest. Christmas Day is like this. So again, very mild Christmas Day for these eastern states, and also towards the Midwest, Great Plains and western states. We'll see these troughs around, sort of showery, but quite mild all the same. Then this ridge in the east gets flattened off into Boxing Day, and beyond that, we see some milder spells for a time into the east, but then this trough forms in the Midwest, and that brings cooler air behind it, especially, as well as some rain and showers behind it, possibly wintry. Beyond this, we see these deep lows coming in from the west into these western states, so getting unsettled there. Ridge forms through the Great Plains towards Canada. And actually, this brings a cold spells to the Midwest into next week. So wintry falls with that. Generally quite cold actually for the eastern half of the USA beyond beyond Boxing Day really, with that run. Cold into the new year with this in the east. Could it be? In the west, it's milder with this ridge coming in. Into the new year, then we see this trough forming in the southeast. Also deep lows from the west bring this classic wet wind weather to these to these to these northwestern states. What happens there? It's cooler by then. Over most areas, deep trough forms over the Great Plains and the Rockies. That heads towards the southern areas. So colder behind that one. Also, could that be a winter storm on the east coast? Could it? Here is the upper temperature forecast from that GFS run. Again, cold blast into the Midwest today, and that transfers towards the east coast by Tuesday. Beyond that, we see a ridge forming, as we know, in the east. So it's mild in all areas from Thursday onwards. So actually warm in parts of the south. Those temperatures are really quite warm. Colder air into the northwest for a time by the eve of Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve is mild, especially in the Midwest. Big southerly wind there. Christmas Day is like this, so mild for areas that are like eastern states and the Midwest and eastern parts of the Great Plains, also into the southwest. And the northwest on this GFS run is seeing a colder day with these colder temperatures there. This trough forms after Christmas Day, and actually, yeah, some colder air comes far south with that trough into the Midwest and so on, parts of the Great Plains, and eventually into the eastern states. A wide cool down by the new year, it seems. Getting quite cold there, quite widely into the new year. We see the mildest weather towards the west and southwest then. And what happens then? We see this little low forming. That is interesting. It's clashing with the cold air that has established over the USA. So that might be a winter storm. And also this low is bringing some moderate weather. So possibly some storms on its southern and western flank. Southern and eastern flank. But behind it, colder air comes southwards. So getting interesting beyond Christmas with the GFS run for the USA. So thanks everyone for watching. Hopefully this was interesting. There's definitely the risk of a winter storm at some points around the new year in eastern parts of the USA, and it will generally get colder. For Europe, it's basically 3 zones. In the south, like Iberia, into parts of the far south of Europe. Like the Med, it's mild and dry, but with chilly nights. From like Ireland, the UK, France, eastwards towards Ukraine, big strong westerly winds, bouts of rain, wintry at times if it's cold enough, and then over Scandinavia and the Baltic Sea States, you've got the PV over you, so it's cold with snow, especially towards the coast. As the air is cold, it's dry, so you need moisture for precip. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. I will do these. We'll do it again like around Wednesday-ish. Yeah, so I'll see you then. Bye for now.